The age of the universe. It's an age-old question. The Bible says the universe was created in 6 days. Science says the universe is 13.77 billion years old. All scientific measurements and observations indicate that the universe is ancient. The Bible's account of the universe being created in 6 days is a seemingly ridiculous story. And yet, in 3,000 years, the Torah has not changed. It has always maintained that the universe was created in 6 24-hour days. But what has changed is our understanding of physics and cosmology in the last 100 years, and specifically the effect that an expanding universe has on space and time. What if I could show you that the Torah is exactly correct? That both perspectives are correct. When we look at those first 6 days from Torah's perspective, looking forward in time from day 1 through to day 6, and apply what we have recently learned in science and cosmology to those 6 days, we will discover that the expansion of the universe has stretched or redshifted those 6 days of creation to 13.7 billion years from our perspective here on Earth. The 6 days and the 14 billion years are one and the same, just viewed from different perspectives in an expanding universe. My objective is to show how the 6 days and the 14 billion years are one and the same, but viewed from two different perspectives. From Torah's perspective, the 6 days is correct. Both perspectives are correct when we take into account what we now know about cosmology and the effect of the expanding universe on time. Using modern cosmology's numbers and principles, I will show that the 6 days of creation in Genesis have been stretched by the expansion of the universe to 13.7 billion years from our perspective here on Earth. It is only now because of modern cosmology that we are able to understand what the Torah has been saying for 3,000 years. This is the underlying scientific principle. The expansion of the universe stretches both space and time. This is accepted cosmology. I will elaborate on this in the presentation. Since the expansion of the universe stretches time, it also stretched those 6 days of creation. Using modern cosmology's numbers and principles, we can calculate the amount that time has been stretched or redshifted since the Big Bang. We then apply this cosmological time stretch factor that we just calculated to the 6 days of Genesis and see if it matches up with science's estimate for the age of the universe. It's almost a perfect match. Cosmology contends that the 6 days of Genesis have been stretched by the expansion of the universe to 14 billion years from our space-time coordinates here on Earth. This presentation is based mainly on the teachings of Dr. Gerald Schroeder. Dr. Schroeder received his PhD from MIT in 2 fields, Earth and Planetary Sciences and Nuclear Physics. He is the author of the books Genesis and the Big Bang and Science of God, which this presentation is based on. The concepts in this presentation are all Dr. Schroeder's, who humbly says, "I am just a lucky guy who knew enough Torah and science to put the numbers into equations." Continuing with the game plan, let's see what the Torah has to say. Every ancient commentary, with no exception, tells us that the 6 days of Genesis were 6 24-hour periods, not longer than the 6 days of our work week. Not 6 epochs, not 6 eras, 6 24-hour days like the days of our work week. And yet, Nachmanides, the Ramban, taught that although the days are 24 hours each, they contain all the ages and secrets of the world. The Vilna Gaon, the genius of Vilna, explained that in those 6 days of creation lies the complete plan of the development of the universe. So what the Torah is telling us is that the 6 days of creation were 6 24-hour days, but in those days lies the complete development and ages of the universe. The 6 days of creation in Genesis are described as if by a narrator, reporting on what God said and did, event by event, as they unfolded. So Torah's perspective is of the entire universe, looking forward in time from day 1 to day 6. Torah's perspective is a universal perspective as opposed to an earth-based perspective. It could not be from an earth-based perspective, because for the first 2 days in Genesis there was no earth, it had not yet been formed. A quick side note here. In the presentation I talk about Torah's perspective or Torah's point of view, and I am purposely not using the term God's perspective. We really do not understand what God's perspective would be. The Torah maintains a universal perspective from day one until Adam. Then, from Adam on, the Torah is earth-based. The Hebrew calendar starts with Rosh Hashanah, which is Adam's birthday. The 6 days of Genesis, even though they are 6 24-hour days, are not included in the Hebrew calendar. This year on the Hebrew calendar is 5782. That's 5,782 years since Adam. We don't say it's 5782 and 6 days. Those 6 days of the creation of the universe are set apart from the time after Adam. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. In the Torah's description of creation, it's like there are 2 timelines. The 6 days, which contained all the ages of the universe, in other words, the 13 billion years, and then the time from Adam on. On the left, we see the 6 days of Genesis, starting with the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang, all the way up to Adam. Torah's perspective is from the beginning of the universe, looking forward in time from day 1 through day 6. And our perspective of those 6 days is looking back in time, 13.7 billion years, from the present back in time to the beginning of the universe. I want to summarize what the Torah says about the age of the universe and then move on to what science says. But before doing that, I have to point something out. The first line of Torah says that the universe had a beginning. 3,000 years later, science finally agrees. Up until 60 years ago, science believed that the universe was eternal, that it had always existed and did not have a beginning. In 1965, Penzias and Wilson discovered the echo of the Big Bang and confirmed the Big Bang theory, and thus confirmed to the scientific community and the world that the universe had a beginning. It's truly incredible that Torah boldly stated this 3,000 years ago. In summary, the Torah says that the 6 days are 24-hour days, but the 6 days contain all the ages and development of the universe. I am suggesting that the ages and development of the universe is referring to the 13.7 billion years. Torah's perspective is universal, looking forward in time. From Torah's perspective, 6 days have passed. And what I am going to show in the next section is that those 6 days have been stretched by the expansion of the universe to 13.7 billion years from our perspective here on Earth. And the last point is that Torah's description of creation is from a universal perspective up until Adam, and then from Adam on, Torah's description of creation is from an earth-based perspective. I want to mention that our sages say that Adam was born about halfway through the 6th day. This is the standard model diagram of the Big Bang from NASA, showing the expansion and development of the universe over time. I want to elaborate on this cosmic microwave background. A fraction of a second after the Big Bang, the first stable particles formed, which was the proton. But it was still too hot for stable atoms to form. It was like an opaque cauldron of colliding subatomic particles from which light was unable to escape. Around 375,000 years after the Big Bang, the universe had cooled enough for stable atoms to form, and light was finally able to break free. This was the initial flash of the Big Bang, a flash of electromagnetic energy that resulted in the cosmic microwave background that we see today. The light, or electromagnetic energy, from the initial flash of the Big Bang has been traveling in space for 13.7 billion years. The expansion of the universe has stretched out this light to what we see today as the cosmic microwave background. Normally at this time, I play a 3-minute video from Astronomy Magazine, Cosmology 101. There's a link to the video at the end of this presentation. Here are the key points of the video. The expansion of the universe is not an expansion through space, it's the stretching of space itself. The video also states that as the universe expands, the cosmic microwave background light is stretched, or redshifted. The light has been traveling in space since stable atoms formed around 13.7 billion years ago. Surprisingly, the video also states that the Big Bang was, and I quote, an unfolding or creation of matter, energy, time, and space itself. But the most important thing to take away from the video is that the Big Bang was not some sort of explosion. It was not an explosion of debris flung out into pre-existing empty space, but it was the stretching of space itself, and therefore the stretching of everything contained within it, including the stretching of the light waves traveling in space and the stretching of time. Yes, the expansion of space also stretches time. And in fact, it stretches time by the same amount that the wavelengths of light traveling in space are stretched. This is standard cosmology. The textbook, The Principles of Physical Cosmology, which is the Bible of modern cosmology, states this perfectly, but in technical terms. The standard interpretation of the redshift, the amount a light wave has been stretched as it travels to us from a distant place in the universe, as an effect of the expansion of the universe, predicts that the same redshift factor applies to observed rates of occurrence of distant events, in other words, the passing of time. This stretching of the light waves is caused by the expansion of the universe. The textbook is saying that time is stretched by the same amount that those light waves are stretched or redshifted. This is known as cosmological time dilation. Now, we know that the expansion of space stretches time by the same amount that the wavelengths of light traveling in space are stretched, or redshifted. So, let's go ahead and calculate how much light has been stretched, and therefore how much time has been stretched since the Big Bang. The calculation does involve some basic cosmology, physics, and math. If you don't have a background in the sciences, no worries. I have another presentation that is almost identical to this one, but all the scientific concepts are explained in layman's terms. That presentation has the same title as this one, and I have a link for it at the end of this presentation. Immediately after the Big Bang, there was only pure energy. It was too hot for matter to form. The first stable matter to form was the proton, just a fraction of a second after the Big Bang. This was the beginning of time. As the 12th century philosopher Nachmanides put it, time only grabs hold when matter forms. The energy or temperature of space at the threshold energy of proton formation was 10.9 times 10 to the 12 degrees Kelvin. The right side of the diagram represents the present. The energy or temperature of the cosmic microwave background, as measured today, is approximately 3 degrees Kelvin. This is the temperature of empty space. Cosmology gives us two snapshots of temperature. One from the start of the Big Bang, from the start of the universe. The other one in the present. The frequency of light or electromagnetic radiation emitted by a black body is proportional to its temperature. In other words, frequency is proportional to temperature. Therefore, the ratio of the two temperatures is equal to the ratio of the two frequencies, which is how much the light waves had been stretched by the expansion of the universe. And, according to cosmology, the amount that the light has been stretched is the amount that time has been stretched. Since this ratio is made up of two snapshots of temperature, we will refer to it as the instantaneous time stretch ratio, which is equal to 3.633 times 10 to the 12th. So we have this instantaneous time stretch ratio, and ultimately what we are trying to do is use science and cosmology to calculate the amount that time has been stretched from the beginning of the Big Bang until the present, and then apply that amount stretched to the 6 days of Genesis and calculate the age of the universe. it would be very tempting to just take this time stretch ratio and multiply it by the 6 days. But we have to take into account one last factor. The universe is expanding at approximately a constant speed. And because it is expanding at a constant speed, the rate of stretching is not constant. It goes down over time. And that has to be taken into account in our calculation. The rate of stretching is equal to the amount the universe stretched over a period of time. The universe is expanding at approximately a constant speed. Therefore, it takes twice as long each time to double in size. Since it takes twice as long to double in size, the rate of stretching gets cut in half each time it doubles in size. And this is described by the exponential function e to the minus natural log of 2. The function e to the minus natural log of 2 mathematically describes the rate of stretching of the universe going down by 50% each time it doubles in size. Below is a graph of e to the minus natural log of 2. The vertical axis is the rate of doubling, going from 1 to 0, where 1 would represent the full rate of stretching, and 0 would be no stretch at all. The horizontal axis is the number of times it doubles in size. The yellow line is our function, e to the minus natural log of 2 times the doubling number. So you can see this perfectly describes the rate of stretching going down by half each time the universe doubled in size. I would like to summarize and then move forward to do the calculation of the age of the universe. We've shown that the expansion of the universe stretched time from the Big Bang until now by the factor of 3.633 times 10 to the 12th. And we call that the instantaneous time stretch ratio. If you remember, that was the two snapshots of frequency, one at the Big Bang and one in the present. Since the universe is expanding at a constant speed, the rate of stretching goes down by half every time the universe doubles in size. Mathematically, this is perfectly described by the exponential equation that we just covered. Intuitively, what this equation does is act as a scale factor that takes into account that the universe is expanding at a slower rate as time goes on. To get the age of the universe, we want to multiply the 6-day period times the time stretch ratio, but taking into account that the rate of stretching goes down by half with each doubling in size of the universe over the 6-day period. So let's go ahead and do the calculation for the age of the universe. Two things I want to point out about this expression. E is just a constant. It's a number and it is equal to 2.71. And the natural log of 2 is also a number equal to 0.693. So A, the age of the universe in days, is equal to the integral from 0 to 6 days of 3.633 times 10 to the 12th times e to the minus 693 times our variable t, which is time in days. We are trying to find out the age of the universe here according to the Torah. So that would be from the beginning of the universe all the way up to Adam. And as we mentioned previously in the presentation, Adam was created about halfway through day 5. Therefore, we are going to integrate from 0 to 5.5 days instead of from 0 to 6 days. So now we will do the integral from 0 to 5.5 days. Luckily, this is a common calculus rule, the integral of an exponent. So now it's just simple math, and the results can be verified with a calculator. The age of our universe in days works out to 5.126 times 10 to the 12 days. Convert that to years by dividing by 365, and it works out to 14.04 billion years. Almost exactly the same as the present day estimate for the age of the universe. I can't control these numbers. These are science and cosmology's numbers. Think about what we have done here. We have used science and cosmology to calculate how much time has been stretched from the Big Bang until the present. And then we apply that time stretch to the 6 days, and it works out almost perfectly to the age of the universe as perceived here on Earth. I have shown that according to cosmology, the 6 days have been stretched by the expansion of the universe to 14 billion years from our perspective. It's almost a perfect match. That's mind-blowing. So what does all this mean? It means the 6 days and the 14 billion years are one and the same. They are both correct, but from two different perspectives of time. It means the Torah has been correct all along. 6 24-hour days. It's only now because of modern cosmology that we are able to understand what the Torah has been saying for 3,000 years. So this begs the question, if the Torah is a man-made fiction, then Moses could have picked any length of time for his creation fairy tale. Moses could have said, it took 1,000 years, or 1,000,000 years. If the creator of the universe is so powerful, why should it take even 6 days? It could be done in 1 day, or instantly. Moses could have said the same thing as our scientists up until 1965, that the universe is eternal, it did not have a beginning. But Moses picked 6 days. And now, with advancements in cosmology, we find out that Moses was scientifically correct. I mean, Moses really nailed it with the 6 days. What a call. How could Moses have known 3,000 years ago? How could any human have known? To me, it's an indication that the Torah could not have been authored by a human. But there's more. The Torah doesn't only state that it took 6 days to create the universe, it described what happened each day. Check this out. Since we know that the rate of stretching of the universe is decreasing exponentially, we can use the same equation that we used earlier in the presentation to determine the duration of each of the 6 stretched out days. We end up with each stretched out day looking as follows. The rate of stretching of the universe was the fastest at the beginning and then decreased exponentially as time went on. So it makes sense that day 1 would be stretched out the most, since the rate of stretching was fastest at that time. And then each subsequent day would be stretched less and less as the rate of stretching went down. Now let's compare what happened on each day according to Torah and according to science. Day 1 in Genesis corresponds to 13.77 to 6.8 billion years ago. As Torah famously says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And science agrees. The Big Bang marks the creation of the universe and the beginning of time. Light breaks free as electrons bond to nuclei, forming the first stable atoms. Shortly after, stars and galaxies start to form. On day 2, the heavenly firmament forms. From our perspective, that corresponds to 6.8 to 3.3 billion years ago. Science says the sun and main sequence of stars and planets, including Earth, formed from the stardust of the previous supernova. The disk of the Milky Way and our solar system formed approximately 4.5 billion years ago. On day 3, Torah says oceans and dry land appear, followed by the first life and then plants. From our perspective, day 3 corresponds to 3.3 to 1.5 billion years ago. And science agrees. The Earth had cooled from its initial molten state to allow liquid water to form, followed almost immediately by the first forms of life, bacteria and photosynthetic algae. On day 4, the Torah says that the sun, moon, and stars became visible in the heavens. Science says that photosynthetic microbes produced an oxygen-rich atmosphere, and for the first time, Earth's atmosphere became transparent. And for the first time, the sun, moon, and stars became visible. How cool is that? On day 5 of creation, the first animal life swarms abundantly in the waters, followed by large reptiles and winged animals. And science says the same thing. First, multicellular animals. The water swarmed with animal life having the basic body plans of all future animals. The Cambrian explosion of life, 530 million years ago, produced every basic animal body plan that we have today. On day 6 of creation, The Torah says the land is populated by animals, mammals, and then humans appear. And science says that during the same period, 250 million years ago, a massive extinction decimated life and 90% of animals disappeared from the fossil record. The land is repopulated, hominids, and then humans. The first 31 verses of Genesis describe the sequence of events for each day of the 6 days of creation. Modern science matches not only the sequence of events, but the day on which and the corresponding time period during which these events happened. Moses could have picked anything to happen, but Moses described this sequence of events happening over a 6-day period. And it turns out that this is cosmologically and scientifically accurate. How could Moses have known this 3,000 years ago? How could anybody have known? Because of discoveries in science and cosmology in the past 100 years, we are now able to understand that the 6 days and the 13.7 billion years are one and the same, but from two different perspectives in time. The Torah's perspective of creation in 6 days is correct. Now the 6 days of Genesis finally make sense. The expansion of the universe has stretched those 6 days to 13.77 billion years from our perspective here on Earth. Torah's 3,000-year-old account of creation in 6 days is scientifically accurate. This demonstrates the incredible truth found in Torah. Some 250 years ago, a great sage and mystic, the genius of Vilna, taught that when the light of Torah came into the world, it split into two parts. Only one part was revealed directly, the prophetic experience. The other part was hidden in the wisdoms of nature. And the time will come, he said, when those hidden wisdoms of nature will be discovered, revealing aspects of the Torah never before understood. I know that this teaching also has a spiritual understanding, but the hidden wisdoms of nature and science are being discovered, and in this case, relativity, the secrets of light and the atom, and the properties of space-time. All these have revealed a new insight into the 6 days of creation. Thanks for listening, and keep on seeking the truth, because there is only one truth.